In the heart of a barren, forgotten world, where dust and whispers of what once was were the only currency, lived an old man named Alara. The sun, a pale, weary eye in a sky of bleached grey, offered no warmth. The rivers were just scars on the land, dry and cracked like an old pot. The trees, skeletal fingers reaching for a sky that had long since stopped listening. In this world of endings, Alara was a keeper of beginnings. His home was a small, crumbling dome, a relic from a time of grand designs and grander failures. Inside, amidst the clutter of scavenged parts and faded maps, was his treasure. It wasn't gold or jewels, but something far more precious. In a small, velvet-lined box lay a single seed. It was dark and smooth, no bigger than his thumbnail, but it held the memory of green, the promise of life, the echo of a world vibrant and singing. It was the last seed. Every day, Alara would take out the seed. He would hold it in his calloused palm, feeling its weight, its potential. He'd detail its stories of the world that was, of vast forests that breathed with the wind of fields of golden wheat that danced under a brilliant blue sky of fruits so sweet they made you cry with joy. He spoke of rain, not the acid drizzle that sometimes fell, but real, clean rain that washed the world and quenched the thirst of every living thing. The few other survivors in the desolate landscape thought Alara was mad. They saw him talking to a tiny, dead thing, and they scoffed. Hope was a fool's luxury, they said. Survival was about the now, finding the next ration pack, filtering the next mouthful of brackish water, patching the holes in their shelters. They had forgotten the taste of hope, and it had left a bitter emptiness in its place. One day, a young girl named Kale stumbled upon Alara's dome. She was a child of the wasteland, born into a world without colour. She had never seen a living tree or a flower. Her world was shades of brown and grey. She watched Alara through a crack in his dome, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. She saw him talking to the seed, his voice a low, gentle murmur. He spotted her shadow. Instead of chasing her away, he beckoned her inside. He showed her the seed. Kale looked at it, unimpressed. It was just a little black stone. But then, Alara began to tell his stories. He didn't just speak the words, he painted them in the air. Kale, who had only known silence and the howl of the wind, found herself listening. She could almost see the green leaves, almost smell the damp earth after a rainfall. She started visiting him every day. She brought him things she found, a piece of colored glass, a strangely shaped rock, a strip of faded blue cloth. They were treasures in her world, and she offered them to the seed. Alara taught her the names of plants she had never seen: oak, rose, willow, daisy. The words themselves felt magical on her tongue. One morning, something was different. The air felt heavy, and the grey sky was darker, bruised with purple. A low rumble echoed across the plains. The others huddled in their shelters, fearing the acid storms. But Alara's eyes lit up. He grabbed his digging tools, his hands trembling with an excitement Kale had never seen before. "It's time," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "The sky is changing. It remembers." He led Kale to a small, sheltered spot behind his dome, a place he had been preparing for years. He had mixed scavenged nutrients and filtered water into the dusty soil, creating a tiny island of potential. With the utmost care, he knelt down and placed the last seed into the earth. Kale watched, her heart pounding. It seemed like such a small, fragile act in such a vast, unforgiving world. The first drops of rain began to fall. But this wasn't the stinging acid rain. It was clean, pure water. Kale held out her hands, feeling the drops, a sensation entirely new to her. It was soft. It was life. The rain fell for a day and a night. Alara and Kale sat by the small patch of earth, watching, waiting. The other survivors, drawn by the strange, clean rain, emerged from their shelters. They stood at a distance, watching the old man and the young girl, their skepticism warring with a flicker of something they hadn't felt in a very long time. Days turned into a week. Nothing happened. The ground remained bare. The whispers started again. "The old fool," they muttered. "Wasted the clean water. Wasted his time." Kale's own hope began to waver. She looked at the barren patch of dirt, and the greyness of the world seemed to seep back into her heart. Alara never wavered. He continued to tend to the spot, protecting it from the harsh winds, whispering his stories to the soil. "Patience," he told Kale, his voice a steady anchor in her sea of doubt. "The best things take their time. Life is not a race." Then, one morning, As the pale sun rose, Kale saw it, a tiny speck of green. It was so small, so impossibly vibrant against the brown earth, that she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. She rubbed them and looked again. It was real, a tiny shoot, pushing its way up towards the light. She cried out, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. Alara rushed to her side, and when he saw the sprout, his weathered face broke into a smile so wide it seemed to crack the very air around him. Tears streamed down his cheeks, mingling with the dust and grime. They weren't tears of sorrow, but of profound, overwhelming triumph. The news spread like wildfire. The other survivors came, one by one, to see the miracle. They stood in stunned silence, staring at that tiny splash of green. It was more than just a plant. It was a symbol. It was proof that the stories were real. It was hope made manifest. That single sprout changed everything. People started working together. They collected the clean rain. They searched for more patches of fertile ground. They protected the precious plant with their lives. Alara, with Kale as his devoted apprentice, taught them what he knew. He taught them about seasons, about soil, about the delicate dance of life. The sprout grew, slowly but surely, into a sapling. Its leaves unfurled, a brilliant green that seemed to drink in the pale sunlight and radiate a light of its own. It was the first tree the world had seen in generations. Under its slowly expanding branches, people gathered. They shared stories, not of the desolate past, but of a green and vibrant future. They started to dream again. Alara lived long enough to see the sapling grow taller than himself. He saw it produce its first flower, a small, white blossom that held the promise of more seeds. He passed away peacefully in his sleep, his work complete. He had planted more than just a seed in the ground. He had planted hope in the hearts of humanity. Kale became the new keeper. She harvested the seeds from the first tree and planted them, creating a small grove. She told the stories Alara had told her, not just to the seeds, but to the children who were now born into a world where green was no longer a myth. The world was still harsh, still a shadow of its former glory, but it was no longer hopeless. The single, tiny seed, nurtured by the faith of one old man, had become a forest of possibility. It taught them the most important lesson of all, that even in the deepest darkness, after the longest winter, life waits. All it needs is for one person to be brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to believe in the coming of spring. And that, in the end, is the truest meaning of hope. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, consider subscribing for more tales of resilience and hope. Until next time, keep planting your own seeds, whatever they may be.